The Carolina Panthers get some phenomenal news about a scary injury that happened in the game yesterday. Head coach Frank Reich discloses how some of the conversations between him and David Tepper have been going lately. There was a couple head scratchers in terms of playing time yesterday, and we got to get to the bottom of this. We have all that and more in this edition of Panthers News Today, and we're starting right now. What up, though? It's Aaron Duncan with the Necessary Bluntness Sports Talk here, giving you recap and analysis of the Carolina Panthers. And yes, things are doom and gloom, but we still have things to talk about. And I do it here with news, updates, film breakdowns to break down our franchise quarterback and everything else going on with the team, podcasts, live streams. I pretty much got everything you need, man, here on this channel. So you have to hit that subscribe button down below and that bell icon. That way you're notified, because this is a film breakdown week. So a film breakdown will be going up. If you want to get more film breakdowns, you can obviously subscribe to the Patreon, patreon.com/UB Sports Talk, to get more in-depth draft content and Panthers breakdowns there. So make sure you head over there if you also want to get some exclusive stuff there. However, today's first bit of news is update on Chandler Zavala. Chandler Zavala only played a few snaps yesterday in the Detroit game, starting left guard. The rookie out of North Carolina State, and he hasn't had a great year, but we had a scary moment during the game where he was blocking, and apparently he suffered a neck injury. He was motionless on the ground and had to be turned over, not voluntarily. The trainers had to do that. They took him off on a stretcher. It was a down part in the game. It really felt like a gut punch to the team at that point of the game that was already struggling. Regardless, we didn't get a full update on Chandler Zavala, but he did go to the hospital during the game. We did get reports that he flew back with the team. Yes, he flew back with the team, which is a huge step. If you have to get held into the hospital overnight and things happen like that, that can be a little bit more frightening per se, but the fact that he was able to go back with the team was big news. Frank Reich also talked today with the media and gave an update and pretty much said that it was a pretty just severe stinger. Nothing really as far as the lower extremities or any kind of loss of feeling in any kind of limbs thus far. Something to monitor with stingers being kind of weird. You just really don't know the timetable on these type of things. It could be something longer. It could be something that he shakes off and comes right back into action. But regardless, this was a scary moment. Ever since the Damar Hamlin situation that happened last year on the field, you always get a little bit nervous when guys are on the field and go down and don't move, and you can't really point to what was happening, because from what I saw on the replays yesterday during the game, I could not really put my finger on what the issue was. But it's good that we got a favorable report for Chandler Zavala. These guys are people first. I don't care if his performance has not been up to par thus far. These dudes have lives outside of this game, outside of just giving us entertainment on a weekly basis on Sundays. So it's good to see that things have been going well for Chandler thus far. Now, in terms of the football side, if Chandler is going to miss time, it seems like Cade Mays will be the likely replacement. Now, we've taken a lot of body blows to the interior, from the injury of Brady Christensen to us already waiting on the return of Austin Corbett, who seems to be very close to coming back, probably after the bye week. But we've been very thin on the interior of the offensive line. However, according to PFF, their performance yesterday was probably one of the better ones of the year. Shout out to Rashad from Panther Nation Podcast. I am borrowing his graphic that really brings together all the PFF ratings. I'm not a big PFF guy myself, but I know you guys probably believe in them and trust them to some extent to look at these ratings, and you can honestly tell. We saw no mistakes or pre-snap penalties from like Icky, and that's kind of a big thing. I talked about that on the live stream post-game yesterday. The best thing that can be possible is you don't notice your offensive line's performance. They were going against the number one rush defense in the NFL, who was only giving up about 61 yards per game. We still ran for a respectable 99 yards total as a team and was fairly effective, with Chuba Hubbard leading the charge there. And pass pro-wise, only gave up 1 sack, which seemed to be more about Bryce as he stepped up into the pocket, and it was just a good rush by Aiden Hutchinson. Regardless, it was good to see the offensive line put together a solid performance, especially when they faced this team in preseason. Now, in particular, they faced this team's backups and struggled in preseason to an extent. So it's good to see the actual progress as they went against their starters and played a lot better. You guys let me know what you thought about the O-line's performance yesterday, and send some prayers and some good vibes for Chandler Zavala down in the comments as well. On the next topic, Frank Reich did his day after the game presser where he talks about some of the things and reactions he got from watching the film. But a question that came up is just about where David Tepper is with everything going on and how things happen there. And he talked about how him and David Tepper speak on a weekly basis. Now, you may seem like, oh, this is David Tepper meddling, but this is something that David Tepper has done with every coach, from Ron Rivera to now Frank Reich. All the coaches that they've had, including the interim that we've had before, have talked about the weekly meetings that they have with David Tepper. And it's David Tepper's franchise. It's David Tepper's business. He can do whatever he wants and operates that way. I thought it was interesting about how Frank Reich discussed how the interactions have gone. I'll play the clip right here.
No, I just think it's
asking for things to happen.
Well, listen, I don't want to speak too much for him, obviously, but there's different philosophies in ownership. You know what I mean? Some owners kind of stay away and don't engage a whole lot. Other owners do, and his philosophy is he's going to engage. And listen, it's only been a short experience, but it's been a really good experience. It hasn't been fun. It's not fun. Those meetings aren't. I wouldn't characterize them as fun meetings, but those meetings make me better, and I trust they make us better.
As you can see, Frank Reich said they haven't been fun. And I'm glad that things have been uncomfortable, I'm sure, with the amount of losing. Nothing has really gone according to what fans expected or the coaches have expected. And I at least want to hear that things are actually, some trees are being shaken. So the boss is actually looking. Now, you don't want him to micromanage. We've been blaming David Tepper for a lot of our shortcomings, and I don't think that he's blameless at all. I'm not defending him, but I don't think it's out of the norm for him to sit down and meet with the coach. Now, we don't want David Tepper being Jerry Jones and trying to pull the strings everywhere else and doing all kind of crazy stuff like a Dan Snyder that was with the Commanders or the Redskins, whatever you want to call them. But I think there is a level of David Tepper is going to be involved. We have to just come to grips with that. I think that him going out and picking Matt Rule over Ron Rivera, I think after that and seeing that fiasco that happened with Matt Rule, he's going to want to sit down and check in with whomever's the coach just to see how things are going, just to see where morale is, and just to check in. That way it's an open door of communication, and guys aren't just in the dark. You don't want guys being blindsided by certain moves being made. Who knows what David Tepper is actually telling Frank Reich to do on a week-by-week basis. But regardless, this is just the ownership that is of the team. He's going to be involved to some form or fashion. Some people may think that it's a bad sign that he actually talks to Frank at all. I don't think it's that bad, but we don't really know the full extent of David Tepper's involvement in the operations on a day-to-day basis. Regardless, he feels like this team is his baby. He's going to try to involve himself in any and everything that goes on. You guys let me know. I feel bad for almost asking it, but you guys let me know how you feel about David Tepper and Frank Reich's relationship after hearing that quote from Frank. And do you think David Tepper is overstepping with these type of weekly conversations? I think it's crazy for me to ask, but let me know how you feel about David Tepper down in the comments. I'm sure you guys have some thoughts. And last but not least, snap counts for the Panthers game were released, and there were some shocking discoveries there. The biggest one probably has to be Terrace Marshall Jr. being active for game day, but not playing a single snap. Now, Terrace Marshall does not play special teams, so he doesn't even get to fill in the cracks there. Terrace Marshall, after last week's 11 target, 9 reception performance where he led the team in both of those categories, it was a surprise for me to not see him on the field. Now, I understand that Jonathan Mingo returned from injury and he has been the starter on the depth chart, but to completely delete Terrace Marshall Jr. from the rotation just seems like a head scratcher. Frank Reich was asked about this, and this is what he had to say.
Frank, Terrace Marshall didn't play yesterday according to the box score. Why is that?
That he should have played. He should have played some. So I wish he had gotten in there a little bit more. That's my fault. I need to make sure. After the week he had the week before with the 9 catches and got a little momentum going, and he and I had a conversation, and so that was poor communication by me. I wanted to make sure that our guys knew to kind of make sure he had some playing time, and that there would be opportunities. So that was my fault.
How does that happen during the flow of a game? Did you lose track of it, or what happens?
Yes, I did. I did not do a good job of telling our coaches, hey, this is what I would like to see. And it just defaulted to what we were doing before he got hurt, which that's normal, right? That's normal. Okay, hey, he's back, so now let's go back to where we were going. But I thought Terrace had done enough, that, hey, let's not just go back to exactly how we were doing this before. He should get some play time.
And you can see Frank said that they discussed this type of rotation, and even though Mingo returned from injury, they did not want to completely have Terrace out of the lineup. He said he talked to Terrace and said that they wanted to try to get him some playing time, but that just didn't happen. Now, Frank Reich is going to always fall on the sword. I think this is why Frank is so well respected by his peers and around the league, even though his performance as a coach hasn't always been up to par all the time. But I just think that the fact that he's going to step out in front as a leader and take the blame for this stuff is a reason why a lot of his assistant coaches really like him as a stand-up guy. Because me, if I'm the play caller and I just want to give you some insight to calling the plays, and when you're the guy in charge of calling the plays, there's a bunch of guys helping you out do certain things. There's going to be an analytics guy up in the box that's going to let you know, okay, hey, this is what happens in this scenario. Some teams go for it here and there. You're going to have that collaborative approach between him and Parks Frazier, Thomas Brown, talking about down the distance, talking about what plays they may like. And then obviously you're going to have other coaches, and Frank is going to tell them what personnel packages, because he may want 2 tight ends on the field. But instead of just having Hayden Hurst and Ian Thomas, he may want Hayden Hurst and Tommy Tremble. And sometimes certain plays vary certain ways. We know Frank Reich kind of took some heat, and I even pointed it out last week how he said that he wanted to call a play for Thielen, but did not know Thielen was on the field. That lets me know that responsibility for personnel is not typically on him as the play caller. He calls out what package he wants, but who's in those packages is going to be up to the position coaches. He's already been on record saying that Deuce Staley is in charge of the running back rotation. So a lot of the flack that's been given about playing Miles Sanders more than Chuba Hubbard, that needs to be pointed in an opposite direction for Deuce Staley. When it comes to receivers, Sean Jefferson is that wide receiver coach, so I think he's going to have to take some accountability there. Like I said, Frank is never going to point fingers at his coaches. He's well respected in that regard. That's why you don't hear him throwing people under the bus, something that's been a little bit different from the prior coaches that we've had. But regardless, I think that if Frank is having some issues there, that can be a little bit more reason to back off being the lead play caller. You can still collaborate with Thomas Brown and Parks Frazier, but let Thomas be that lead guy. You chime in. Try to create a dynamic like they had in Kansas City with Andy Reid and with Eric Bieniemy, where Eric Bieniemy didn't always call all the plays. Andy Reid stepped in sometimes. Or in Miami, Mike McDaniel has been on record saying that there's guys that call certain run plays in certain scenarios, and on a down-by-down basis, things can change about who calls what play on certain scenarios there. So it's all a collaborative approach, and it's not something that's out of the ordinary to do something like that. So I think that could be something there where Frank Reich actually is allowed to manage the team a lot more, because we saw last week the misuse of the timeouts as well. So that lets me know that Frank has a lot going on at the time. Then you add that with some of the procedure issues with getting the play in on time on a timely basis with Bryce. And it feels like, hey, from just an operational standpoint, it could do some good for Frank to step back. Now, I do think that the play calling against Detroit was a lot better and a lot more refreshing to see in terms of just changing things up. But I still think that from a management of the game perspective and just managing the whole team altogether, I think there can be some benefits from them switching to who's the primary play caller. Who knows? Like I said, with the type of guy he is, he may be trying to fall on the sword with this untalented or lack of talent that we have offensively and not really hurt Thomas Brown's chances of getting the job. I know that's my tinfoil hat, and Frank Reich has not earned the benefit of the doubt thus far, but that's just something to think about. Another guy on defense was Jeremy Chinn. Jeremy Chinn did not play many snaps at all, only 18 snaps according to what I saw. Some of those are special teams because he plays the personal protector on the punt team. Why? Jeremy Chinn is a very versatile and talented guy. He has his shortcomings, but there's a lot of things that he does well. We just saw him last week get a sack, blitzing from the inside. This guy is a great rusher. He's good at close to the line of scrimmage, being physical. Why can't he seem to get on the field on a consistent basis? I think it has to do with some of the teams that we're facing. Him not being great in coverage against certain packages. I don't think Avera is going to lean on him all the time in that terms of that big nickel. Some weeks you're going to use the little nickel, I guess, and that's going to be Troy Hill when you have more teams that spread you out per se and try to attack that way depending on their game plan. But some weeks when the team's a more physical downhill type of team and they spread it out and do a lot of things versatility wise like the Lions do, it may not be the best matchup in use for Jeremy Chinn on a down-by-down basis. And the way certain teams come out with their personnel, they're going to dictate what packages the Carolina Panthers use on defense. So as Jeremy Chinn being one of my favorite players, I would love for them to figure out a way to get him on the field, because clearly when he's around the ball, he makes a difference. So it has to be a certain way to fit him into this lineup. I understand with all the injuries we have in the secondary, things can be a little bit weird there as well. But You got to figure this stuff out. You can't have guys like that with that type of athleticism and physicality and playmaking ability when it comes to being around the football, have them sitting on the sidelines watching and not getting enough snaps. But we have to figure something out, man, and figure out what the best combination is. Otherwise, we got to get healthy just in general. But you guys let me know how you feel about Terrace Marshall Jr. and Jeremy Chin getting very limited snaps. I know Terrace was crazy for him to not play at all after leading the team in receptions, but I want to get you guys' thoughts down below in the comments. And just about anything else that we discussed in this video, I want to get your thoughts. Make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. Without further ado, I'm wrapping this video up. This has been the latest edition of Panthers News Today. I am Aaron Duncan signing off. See you. It's time. Peace.